Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from San Jose, USA, Dr. Brian Underhill. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you. Brian is the founder and chief executive officer of CoachSource LLC, which is the world's largest executive coaching firm with over 1,200 coaches globally. He's also an author, and all of you know I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of a book or a co-author of a book titled Coach Me, Your Personal Board of Directors. So, Brian, let's talk coaching. What inspired you to start CoachSource, and what was the initial vision?
Well, I would go way back into undergraduate. So we're talking, 30 or so years ago. I think we've all had the world's worst job at some point in our careers. You've probably had one. We've all had one of those. Unfortunately, my world's worst job was my first job out of college. Wow. And since I went to USC, University of Southern California in Los Angeles, I thought working in the entertainment industry in Los Angeles would be really fun and exciting. And ended up working for a producer. I thought I was going to do interesting television related things. And instead I found that I was the personal assistant to this very quirky kind of producer person who would, yell and scream and make me do errands and chores and do the dishes and the get the groceries and whatever. Just pure misery, honestly. And I did it way longer than I should have. Very abusive. Today we would easily call that abuse and, verbal abuse and whatnot. The point was that it got me to say, oh my gosh, is this what the real world of work is going to be like? This is my first job out of college. And if this was what work is like and how people can treat you, this is pure misery. I can't imagine having a whole life like this. It got me really interested in organizational psychology. So the mixture of business and psychology, I started to study that, or IO psychology. I ended up going to graduate school for IO psychology, and then started, by luck, I think, started working in the coaching field. I started to work with a very well-known coach at the time, or in our field. Many people here would know the name Marshall Goldsmith. Yeah. I started to work for him as the field was starting to become something, and did a number of years with him. It was not a world's worst job. It was one of the best jobs. Yeah. And then spun off, and we started CoachSource about 17 years ago to kind of be our own executive coaching firm and just kind of see how you can make the workplace a better place for everybody. Creating great leaders through coaching, which we know affects not just the leader, but everyone around them, everyone under them, and well beyond all of that.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. What a great response. And, Brian, you would have seen the evolution of coaching. Because I remember 4 decades ago, coaching or mentoring was done either by a family elder or by someone senior in the organization who took a liking for you. I'd love to understand from you, how do you see the evolution of coaching from the time when you first started?
Well, when I joined Marshall's company, we were doing 360 feedback debriefs. Yeah. 360 feedback was very popular, still sort of is, but we were doing it then. And we were doing tens of thousands of debriefs with leaders who got a 360. And it was either in person or on the phone, about an hour in length. And really, honestly, leaders kept saying, I really liked that coaching thing you did with me for the 1 hour. Could we do some more of those? And we just started to extend and expand just that 360 debrief experience, honestly, into a more full-length coaching assignments, because the leaders really liked having kind of a confidential confidant someone who's well-versed in human behavior and business, but yet is not in their own system, someone they can talk to, someone who can hold them accountable, even provide some great reflections and observations, maybe advice, it kind of depends there. And so the leaders really started to like having this. The company started to see that leaders who were going through coaching were advancing much faster in their leadership capabilities. And that trend has just continued. You know, some would say we're still in full force in the coaching world today, with a record number of credential holders, and businesses of all shapes and sizes seem to be embracing coaching. So it really just unexpectedly kind of took off from 25 years ago or so when I started, and is still going very strong.
Very interesting. And can you share with us a pivotal moment or a story in your career or your life that solidified your own belief in the power of coaching?
You know, one of the early days of coaching, and this could be late 1990s, I think, just as I was becoming, you know, doing more coaching, more than just the 360, you know, we were doing 6 months with different leaders, and honestly still trying to figure out, what do we do with a leader for 6 months? We're still figuring out our methodology and so forth. But one of my favorite stories is this was one of the mobile phone companies, and it was probably 5 generations of company. You know, they've been sold and been sold and been sold. I don't even know what company they are today. And I remember working with a gal in marketing who was really smart. She was Ivy League smart, if I recall. But everyone around her who works for her said that she just dug in way too much on the details, and she just micromanaged like crazy. And you know, one of the enjoyable parts of coaching is when you help a leader get a new insight, a new aha. And sometimes we don't even know what that insight or aha will be yet necessarily. It was just some innocent questioning I was doing with her. I wasn't quite sure where I was going with it, when it suddenly occurred to her that she thought her value was supposed to be able to do stuff, her analytical skills, doing things. That's what she'd gotten good at all this time. That's what she thought she was supposed to do. And she thought, if I delegate to everyone else, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
What value do I add? No value was her mindset. And I didn't expect to go there with her, but through coaching, we discussed more and more about that and that mindset. And does she still add value as a leader with others doing the work? And she quickly realized, that's when the light bulb went off. But wait a minute, there is a major role for what I do to add value in supporting the others, in helping them along, in getting stuff out of the way for them, in coordinating, in leading, inspiring, all of that. It was just watching someone go from an individual contributor, honestly, to the vice president that she was in a split-second moment through coaching. I wasn't even trying to get there. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get there, but we got there. It reminded me, and reminds me to this moment, how powerful executive coaching can be, how career-changing and honestly life-changing it can be.
Well said, well said. And Brian, what would you say are some of the common misconceptions about executive coaching that you'd like to talk about?
Well, you know, the early days of coaching, it was seen as people in trouble receive a coach. And we're not sure if we're going to keep them, so they get a coach. We'll see if we can fix them. That's really gone away. I still get a few of those. I got one of those the other day. Excuse me. But you know, the misconception could be that you're in trouble, or this person needs to be fixed, let's get them a coach. The more standard way you see today in the field is the coaching is used for the best and the brightest, for the high potentials, the high performers. It's not inexpensive. So if you're going to spend some money on this, you want to invest it in the right places. So the misperception of using coaching for problem children is one that's always worth clarifying. And maybe one other I would add is, sometimes we get a request for coaching where it's clear the boss has not really done a great performance management job with someone. and they haven't told the person some things they need to tell them. And then they expect us to show up and do the dirty work of telling them things. And coaching should not be a replacement as a proxy for performance management. I remember we got one where they literally wanted us to tell someone that his accent was too thick and no one could understand him. And I had to challenge that and go, why do I have to do this? I mean, yes, I know, I can see why you want me to do that, but can we get you guys to a place where you can have an open dialogue about this, and not make the coach do something that the manager really ought to do as part of their responsibilities?
Correct. Well said. Well said. My next question, Brian, is that how does CoachSource differentiate itself in such a crowded market of executive coaching providers?
Yeah. And it's a growing market.
Absolutely.
Everything from executive coaching providers to app-based, we call them app-based discounters. So apps that are well known that do coaching at very inexpensive rates. So we play just in the executive coaching space. So with executive level leaders. And the coaches that we're using are very seasoned and often have fantastic business experience. And really a big differentiator is this is all we do. So is coaching and coaching related items. And some of our competitors, actually most of them, will have other businesses like outplacement, like executive search, trainings, and so forth. So they have other businesses that make them more money that they're trying to get actually going into an organization. Whereas all we do is coaching and executive coaching, and we seek to be really good at that and thought leaders in that field. And we're not trying to sell other types of businesses or anything like that.
Well,
so we like to call ourselves the world's largest pure play executive coaching provider.
Amazing. Well said. And how has technology changed the way CoachSource operates, especially given the 3 years of lockdown that the whole world has been through?
Yes. We've always done a mixture of face-to-face and virtual type coaching. I think most coaches probably have. And so entering into the pandemic, it was very easy just to keep going in a virtual way. And as you know, we all adopted Zoom and Teams and everything else very, very fast. And that became standard fare. So that's pretty typical of our field. You are seeing a trend, a couple interesting trends. One is more in the area of managing coaching. More technology is being used to oversee coaching activities in a client, and we have a software that does that, and I know our competitors do as well. And so there's been a season where many companies say, oh, it's out of control managing all of our coaches. Do you have some sort of software to help us do that? And that's been a part of the business for a little while. But one more piece of technology that's really, really new is how might AI play around in coaching? And we're playing around with one such tool right now, especially after the ChatGPT release. In these large language models, the AI tools are getting quite good. Now, I don't believe they will replace a human coach, but they can really enhance human coaching. So they can actually engage a dialogue with someone I'm coaching in between our sessions and check in with them and see how they're doing and have they accomplished their goals and things of that nature, and follow up with them. So very new, very nascent in our field, but one that has very interesting possibilities.
Fascinating. And my next question is, on culture. You live in probably one of the most culturally diverse countries in the world, the US. How do you handle the dynamics of cultural differences when coaching global executives in multinational corporations?
It's such a great question because we are a multinational company. In a sense, our coaches are in, I think, live in about 51 countries. And of course, the companies we work with They might be mostly headquartered in the US or Western Europe, mostly, but the coaching assignments can take place anywhere in the world. And I think working here at CoachSource, you have to be pretty culturally adept and aware of cultural nuances, which Americans aren't always known for. But when you work here, you do need to have some senses of that and actually know the map and know the geographies and know which, there's interesting nuances that maybe we wouldn't agree with in the States, but, if you're working in the Middle East, they have sort of beliefs about what kind of coach can work there and what kind can't, for example, and we may not agree with that in the States, but that's how they do things in the Middle East, and we need to know about that. And as well, when we're talking to a leader about an assignment, we do want to explore, is there an intercultural issue at play? I remember one here in Silicon Valley where it was a Russian leader in charge of all Indian and Chinese engineers. And he was getting a reputation for being a major bully and pushing everyone around, and no one was speaking up. And it didn't occur to them that this could be an intercultural issue, but it certainly occurred to us that this very likely could be at least partially an intercultural issue. So that's why we think about coaches who are adept at intercultural matters, or might actually be one of those several cultures I just mentioned, who might have some skill there. So these are things we really do have to consider and think about.
Well said. Well said. And in the context of leadership, how do you see the role of emotional intelligence, and how does it play into your coaching methods?
And when emotional intelligence came on the forefront, I think its original statement is still true, which is IQ is not enough correlation to success, right? I mean, yes, IQ has some correlation to success, but EQ, emotional intelligence, absolutely does as well. And that continues even now in the sense that we still get plenty of coaching requests where EQ growth is a main part of what we're being asked to do. And we've looked at various studies of what do leaders want from coaching assignments? What is it that they need to improve in? And improving emotional intelligence skills is often one of the maybe top 5 areas of development that leaders are looking to improve in. So it's very commonly used even today. And we have plenty of assignments where maybe the leader even takes an EQ assessment of some form, kind of learn where they're strong and where they're lacking, and then helping them with addressing the parts, perhaps that they're lacking. So absolutely very critical, and I imagine always will be.
Very interesting. I've time for 3 more questions for you. My next question is that how do you, Brian, see the future of executive coaching evolve over the next few years?
Well, one I alluded to is, could there be a role for AI? Excuse me. And what might that look like? Could it be that lowest level leaders have an AI only coach? I'm not sure I agree with that, but maybe people would envision that. And then maybe at executive level coaching, I still think humans really do crave that one-to-one attention. We are wired for relationship. So I don't see the human coach being replaced, especially at executive levels. So, but again, the AI could play a really interesting role in supporting the human coach and helping the leader get stuff done that they said they would do, to keep track and remember everything we've talked about, perhaps, to point out trends that are taking place. There could be a really interesting role and still to be discovered and explored, I think. So that would be one of the main areas. Another one, we're seeing new forms of coaching that are continuing to gain credibility. The most notable is team coaching, and there are more team coaching certifications and trainings out there. So basically applying coaching to a team environment and helping a team be more effective. That's probably one of the biggest trends that we're seeing right now, is greater use of team coaching. And you're seeing more use of group coaching
Okay.
as well, where you could get a cohort of people together to study a certain topic or a variety of topics as well. That one's coming a little bit more slowly, but those are, over the next, 5 years or so, I think both of those, you're going to see a lot more prevalence.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So my last two questions, and these are for you now personally. My next question is that most of us, Brian, are shaped by people who we interact with. My question is, how have you been shaped by people in your life, and how are they influencing you as a coach today?
Wow, this is a fantastic question. And a very obvious answer would be the time I spent with Marshall Goldsmith, and I still see him periodically, really shaped so much of what I know about coaching at the time, and how to be a business person, how to run a business, and how to interact with others and so forth. Many of us spent time with him, and we're all kind of either working with each other or working in our own businesses, but doing so quite successfully, I would think. And so we probably all had some great learnings from that time. And maybe along with that, there's family members of mine that have been pretty entrepreneurial over the years, and I think I have that bug. It's hard for me to maybe work full time for someone else. I really love working for myself in our company, in this company. And there's a number of family members that I've kind of looked up to, who've been fantastic entrepreneurs and have created great organizations. In one or two cases, the person has passed, but the organization still thrives today and is well known, kind of things. So some of those family members have given me some nice inspiration.
Fantastic.
As well. I could probably think of more, but I'll stop there.
Fantastic. And my last question, Brian, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your amazing understanding of coaching, of human beings, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want a lot of our young viewers and listeners to take away?
Well, one I would say, and it's just sort of a heart of coaching, is one really needs to know themselves and constantly know themselves. And if someone hasn't been through feedback or some assessments, and to do so on a regular basis. My wife jokes I'm always taking some assessment. She's like, don't you know yourself already? Why do you need to keep taking those things? But I think we're always learning and growing, and we need to know what we're good at and what we can improve, and what floats our boat, what gets us excited, what gets us up. Without that, you can be fairly ineffective. And not only that, you might be in the wrong career for a while. You might be doing a career that pleases someone else, but not yourself. So knowing yourself, that'd be one of the big ones that I would put on that list. Another one I would say is, and it's easy to say, but hard to do because I don't do it well at all. But when I think back for the various points of my career where I was really anxious about something and really worried, and creating plans and ideas and spinning around and not sleeping well, but then things just sort of work out. There's a famous adage, ancient wisdom, about do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So there's a huge amount of truth to that. Now, I wish I could live that better, but it is so true that we should be focusing on a lot of what we got dealing with today. We don't know. Tomorrow's not promised. We don't know what's to come. And so many of these things we worry about end up kind of working themselves out or never become an issue. The amount of times we worry about something that never becomes an issue is actually quite high. So, and then maybe one final thing is, I've always seen what I do in this field as a long-term destination for me, that I know if someone I met maybe 25 years ago, I'm imagining I'll probably still know them or be in touch with them or something. This is a long game. And so treating people well, having great relationships, being, not burning a bridge. It's a long game if you're in this field for the long term, and a lot of us have known each other forever. And I think just remembering that is a short-term win is not going to do much good, but a long-term investment that can do a lot of good. So those are probably my three.
Well said. And on that note, Brian, and your three wonderful lessons. First one you said was know yourself, understand your strengths, maybe your weaknesses. Second you said was tomorrow will look after itself, or as the old line says, this too shall pass.
Yes, right.
And the third one you said was life is a long game, a long destination. Invest in relationships, and I'm sure your people's and your networks. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me at such length about CoachSource. I am a coach, and I thought I picked up lots of interesting tips from you as you were talking about coaching. Thank you also for speaking to me about so many different aspects of the kinds of people you have worked with. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
Indeed. Thank you. Thanks for having me. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.